Welcome to the Solo Shows panel, the first panel of the Hollywood Fringe Creative Workshop. Before we get started, I do have a few announcements. First up, the Fringe 2020 dates were just announced. The Hollywood Fringe Festival 2020 starts on June 11th. Previews will be held June 4th through 9th, with the festival proper taking place June 11th through 28th. Our opening night party, which is so much fun, is going to be on June 10th. Next announcement is the scholarship applications are now open. You two were both scholarship winners, right?
Yes.
I
was.
You were, and Karina, you applied, right?
got an honorable mention.
Honorable mention.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the Fringe Scholarship is available to first-time producers. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Available to first-time Fringe producers who contribute to the ethnic, cultural, racial, mentally or physical disabled, and the LGBTQ plus diversity of the Fringe community. So it's a really, really good thing. The application's just opened, and we will be having a panel with co-chairs and other scholarship committee members on Wednesday, November 20th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the complex. So if you're interested, come to that. It's a free panel talking about how to apply for the Fringe scholarships that we do. Finally, office hours is going to be Tuesday, December 10th at the Broadwater Plunge right here from 7 to 10 p.m. Office hours are so much fun. It's a really good space to network, get information, share about your show. So that is going to be Tuesday, December 10th. If all of these announcements are scaring you, then it's time to sign up for our e-newsletter and follow our social media where we post all of this and more. You can sign up for the newsletter at our website, hollywoodfringe.org. And you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Hollywood Fringe. Finally, today's other events. Join us later for sessions including speed dating, which you can sign up for before lunch, and our mixer afterwards at the Broadwater Plunge at 5 p.m. Speaking of lunch, Jesse Boy over there on Vine near the Starbucks is giving 10% off to anyone that mentions Fringe. So if you mention Fringe at Jesse Boy, you get 10% off. It's really good Korean food. Like all of our events, these sessions will be recorded and posted to Fringe TV, the place out to check out all things Hollywood Fringe. So if you miss anything today or gotta run, no worries, because this will be posted online. If you have any more questions about anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime at support@hollywoodfringe.org. Once again, reach out to us at support@hollywoodfringe.org. All right, so now we can get started now that we're done with all the housekeeping. So why don't we start off by everyone telling your names?
Okay.
Sure, I'm Victor Isaac.
Hi, I'm Karina Calderon.
Hi, I'm Jay Elijah Cho.
Great, and then if you guys could give a quick office hours elevator pitch of what your show was about.
I did The Word in 2018, which was a story ultimately about forgiveness of yourself, where a reverend wrote a letter to a parole board to release an inmate with previous history, and they each tell their own story, as they meet in the end and resolve some long-standing issues.
My solo show is called From Lap Dance to Sundance, and it's pretty much in the title. It's the story of my journey of how I started stripping in Austin, Texas, did it for 7 years. And while I was in the club, I met a girl who led me to my first acting teacher, who led me to my first agent, who led me to my first lead role audition in a SAG feature, and I booked it. So I went from stripping to pay for acting classes and headshots and stuff to the lead in a Sundance feature, and now I'm here. Yeah, it's a lot.
I wrote and performed Mr. Yunioshi, which is a one-man show where I played Mickey Rooney developing his character for Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yes, it was
Awesome. And then, so how did you guys get involved in theater and playwriting?
I started acting in high school, just because my father was an actor. He lived here in LA, we lived in Sacramento, and I started acting there. And I moved to Vegas after a small stint in the Army, and I started doing improv, and then I started doing stand-up because I wanted to get on stage more, and then that kind of sort of bled down the road because you're writing for stand-up, and then improv turned into sketch, and then ultimately turned into plays.
Well, I actually started film and TV, and then I've always wanted to do theater, so then I started taking this writing class with Jessica Lynn Johnson, and I always wanted to do like a solo show or something, and didn't know exactly what I was gonna write about. I just knew I had to get a lot of this like childhood trauma and like shame from also coming from the club, growing up in a really rough neighborhood with like a lot of domestic violence in the home. I just had like a lot of stuff that I knew I had to get out, and I knew it needed to be like on the stage with people, human to human. So it just started to write itself, and then the solo show is the first theater thing I've actually ever done.
Oh, wow.
So that, I mean, I still get stage fright, like right now. I'm like, yeah.
That's
Oh, no,
okay.
we're
Me
all
too.
nervous.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, you know, when you're up there and you're like, you think some people are more trained, or you think you're trained.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's a whole other animal when you're in front of human beings, not in a camera. So it's like, yeah, my solo show is actually been my journey of like getting out of this nervous state too, I guess.
I think I always knew I wanted to act since I was little. I think I told my parents after I saw, I think Ki Hui Kwan, he was in The Goonies and Indiana Jones. And as a kid, I was
Yes.
kind of like, I want to be that kid when I grow up. And so I pursued
Mr.
acting,
Jones, that's amazing.
and then I
Dr.
did,
Jones.
yeah, Dr. Jones, short round. So I went to college for acting, and I had applied for like film school, but like I was not a very productive student, and so I did not put together a good package, so I did not get in. So I ended up going to a theater school in Florida, and that ended up being my focus for like a long time. And then because I think, I mean, the beauty of theater is because it's so easy to make, I feel, not easy to make, but like in terms of what you need production-wise. Like if you have a space and friends, you can put on a show. And I think that writing sort of came out of wanting to create more opportunities like that. We started a sketch show in Tampa, Florida, which is where I was doing theater, called Some Sort of Show. And yeah, just trying to find opportunities to just like get a chance to write, which I think is like, when you're surrounding yourself with other like creatives, I think it's something that just happens, kind of like, oh, you would be great as blank, and like, oh, and then I could play this, and then like, we'll just write that scene, we'll do that. But that's how I sort of fell into writing.
Awesome. And the next question is for Victor. So Victor, you last year wrote an ensemble piece.
I didn't write it.
Oh, you didn't?
I was
write
in it, yeah.
You were in it, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'll take the credit. I mean, it was a good show.
So I'm wondering, how is your process for writing a one-person show? Like, where do you get started?
I am a very, I'm really good at procrastinating. And so I think a lot. The word was, I think, 7 years in the making. I thought a lot about it, and the script was ready like 2 weeks before the first preview. So I procrastinate quite a bit. But I do, I think a lot about it. I internalize a lot of what I wanted the show to be about, and then just allow that meaning to flow through the story, because it's not very direct. It's not excuse me, very explicit what the show is about until like the very, very end. But I like to put a lot of thought into it, let things overcome, and then just kind of think through. I'll be sitting in my car, because we live in LA, I'm in my car by myself a lot, and I'll actually just like have that dialogue with myself. I'll be like, da-da-da-da, no, da-da-da-da, no, you know, just let it go. And then eventually I'll go, okay, I'm ready, and I'll sit down and I'll write, normally at night after midnight, which is great when you have to be at work at 8. You know, when I'm done, I think it's crap, but I let it sit for a day or two and then go back and read it, and then it's not as bad as I thought it was.
And then, Karina, how was your process? Like, how did you get started writing this one-person show?
Journaling.
Journaling?
Yeah, I had a couple journals, and I would just in that writing class. I took a sketch writing class, and then I was taking another writing class with Jessica. But in that, she would just prompt us for like writing exercises, and walk us through it. And then I started noticing a theme in my journaling, and that it was talking about my childhood, and like I thought I had let go of that lifestyle, but I was still carrying the weight of like, oh my God, what if? I mean, I'd be on huge sets, and if anyone would say anything about like stripper pole or stripper, I'd be like, did they find out? Oh my God, they know? Are they like talking about it? I just couldn't live with that anymore, so I started writing it out, and that started writing itself. My journey of like, from childhood of being, the oldest of 3 girls, single mother, Latina who was born in Moline, Illinois, but then grew up in Texas, and then had, always had that struggle of like not being Mexican enough, or being too Mexican, or being too American and not Mexican enough, and then bullied by Mexican girls because they would, oh, why does she act like a white girl, or, not Mexican enough. So started writing that out, and then it got to like the journey of I wanted to be a storyteller, I wanted to be an actor. And same thing, I've had some amazing opportunities. My first film was the lead in a movie that went to Sundance and did the panels there. I got nominated for an Imagen Award, which is a Latino award, with Eva Longoria, Eva Mendes, Gina Rodriguez. And so right away I felt that, and it's like, but when you have that and then you're like, you have to start over, it got really difficult. So I was like, oh, you're right, I have to write, my own opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
This festival is that as well. Like this festival, like I've learned so much, but and my story, and also my confidence and my knowledge and my wisdom on like writing my own story. And I never imagined like that I could have a feature or a series, or now I'm writing a book. Like I never would have imagined, like I limited myself. During the festival, it is a crazy boot camp where it gets really hectic, it gets really crazy, but it's so rewarding. I'm here doing the panel with these guys. But going back, how did it get started? Like, yeah, I need to tell my story, no more shame. And if I tell it beautifully, with my heart, and, I can let other people know, it's like your upbringing, your background, like that's gonna make your story even that much more beautiful. So, yeah, writing my struggle, my shame, writing it out. That's how my story came together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then Jonathan, same question.
What's the question?
Oh yeah, sorry. How did you get started? Like, what led you to start writing a solo show?
I don't think that I ever had an interest in doing a solo show, but I was in Tampa, and there was kind of a big stink where one of the directors did the whitewashing thing, and like amongst the community I noticed like a certain backlash, and it started because I had noticed he had done a show the year before called the Scientology Pageant, where there's an Asian character, a Chinese character, and it was not an Asian actor playing that character, and like it was very broad. And, I remember like seeing it and being like, okay. And the next year, like it came up again, and in the comments, like when it was brought up, he was like, well, it's satire. And someone posted a picture of Mickey Rooney and just like memed it and just wrote satire at the bottom of it. And I saw that, and I made a comment. I was just like, I'm just gonna write a show where I play Mickey Rooney developing that character. And then like, I got a bunch of likes, and I was like, oh, wait a second. And then people were like, yeah, I'll come see that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had the premise, and I did this show, a very rough version of this at the New York Fringe Festival in 2015 maybe, and I submitted the pitch. I was like, I'll submit this pitch, and if they say yes, we'll take it, then I'll write the show. Because I didn't want to I don't know, I guess I'm like, I don't want to say lazy, but like I don't want to put a bunch of effort into something that I'm not sure is going to go anywhere. And so I felt like it was a strong enough pitch that if they were like, yeah, we'd like to see that, I'd be like, I'm going to New York. So they were interested, and I wrote a very rough version of it for the New York Fringe, which I was happy with it, but I feel like when I did it again here, I rewrote it, and I think I did sort of the same thing of kind of like, okay, I'll submit to the scholarship program, and like if I get accepted, I'll try and do a better. I think with a premise with that, like my big fear was always that the show wouldn't live up to the premise. You know, like it's such a clear thing that people already have an idea of, I think, what they're gonna see, and so like if you don't have a show that confidently carries them through the story you want to tell, it can be. I was always worried that am I making things worse? I suppose because it's also such like a sensitive topic that I was kind of like, oh no, am I contributing to the problem? But yeah, I think I start with a deadline, and that's how I got into writing the solo show. It's like, yeah,
I'll always get you to do it.
Yeah, whatever
That's-
works.
I need that too.
Me, yeah, that's literally.
On the grind.
I knew I wanted to do the solo show, and I had after 2017 Fringe, I thought, okay, next year I'm gonna do the solo show, and I'm gonna win the solo performance award, and okay, what show am I gonna do now? And then I signed up for it, and I got a director, and I was kind of like, just sort of talking to my friends, like, oh, what do you do next round? I was like, I think I'm gonna do a solo show. And one of my friends who knew the idea before, I'd done sort of a version of it. It wasn't a solo show, but in Serial Killers here at Sacred Fools. And he was like, are you gonna do The Word as a solo show? And I said, yes. He goes, I'm your director. And I was like, great. Now I have to write a script.
Yeah.
And so, signed up for Fringe and everything. And again, like I procrastinate. It wasn't until 2 weeks before the first preview.
I can't work like that.
But it's bananas. I don't recommend it. It's not for the faint of heart, but sometimes just like having a deadline, having something to motivate you will get you there. Because sometimes just, I don't know, I'm just not one of those people who can just be like, okay, well someday I'll do this, so I'm gonna write it now.
yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought up your friend, because I feel like when I create, like, it's helpful to have friends that you talk
Absolutely.
projects about, because they're like, hey, what's going on with the thing that you were talking about?
Yeah.
And I feel like for a long time with Mr. Yunioshi, it was people would just bring it up, like before I'd finish writing, like, hey, are you gonna do that thing? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I should at some point.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's helpful to have.
yeah, super helpful. It's a solo show, but you don't do it by yourself.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot
right.
of people
So
helping
that-
with your solo show.
Actually leads me into my next question. So y'all wrote it and starred in it. What about directors? Did you guys produce it? Did you guys, how did you find people that you trusted to handle all of that? Or did you do it on your own?
So, go ahead.
I did not do it on my own. Go ahead,
Yeah.
you were ready.
So I wrote it. I started in it. Again, I found a director, and I had an intention of having a producer that had nothing to do with the creative side of it, because that's actually really important. Because there are things that happen that need to be taken care of. That sometimes when you're only on the creative side, especially in Fringe, how crazy it is, you need somebody outside of the madness to be able to organize things for you. And this story for me was very personal, that nobody else knew that, but it was very personal, it was very raw, and I was really anxious about whether or not I was gonna be well. So I approached somebody about it, and their response to me was very aggressive, and it wasn't bad, but they were just like, okay, well, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this. And I was like, okay, I'm not really ready for that level of intensity. So, yeah. So I just, I didn't have anybody else. So my director and myself also produced it. We are not the best people to do that. I will say that. It's important to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Handling those kinds of things wasn't the best, but it worked out okay. But if you can get somebody else to produce who's not part of the creative process, I would recommend that.
I didn't have that luxury. I was my producer. I straight up did more rides for Lyft, like however I could make the money. 'Cause with like postcards. Are we talking like producing it, marketing, all the?
That
Yeah,
whole
not
thing,
not
yeah.
the nitty gritty. That's going to be a panel later on.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Like, how did you manage writing, starring, and producing as well?
Just. I can't tell you everything I did.
Yeah.
I was gonna say sleep. Take care of yourself and take pressure off by knowing like this is not life or death. Have a good time. Have fun. This is all solo shows. So just tell your story or whatever story you're telling. Time management is really important too, like being strict and disciplined and dedicated and having a stake in the ground. I'm really a stake in the ground type person, so if I have like a date or a deadline, I'll work better. Yeah, just myself. Yeah,
It was just you the whole thing?
I had a director.
The director, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, because it's a lot. It's a lot
It's
to
a lot.
write something, let alone put it up for the Fringe.
Yeah, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I would say for the first round when I did it in New York, it's interesting you brought up sleep, because in the leading up to it, I actually had a very good team that went with me to New York. It was a stage manager that I worked with a lot, and then actually it was just my stage manager, and like it was a stage manager who I knew was really good at what he did, and I was like, can you please help me? Like, will you do my lights and just do everything? And he was the one who was like very helpful, like you said, outside. He'd be like, hey, do you have programs? And
Right.
like, oh no,
Right,
I
exactly.
don't have programs.
Exactly.
But my director was my roommate back in Florida, who was a really good theater director, and he was the one who kind of told me, because I hit a point in the process where I got hung up on the idea that like I'm Asian writing this thing about like this thing that's probably very hurtful for a lot of Asian people, and so I was like, and so I started agonizing over like that, like the cultural impact of like not even like worrying about an audience and whatever. And it was my roommate who was kind of like, you need to sleep, you need to like play some video games just to like get out of that, because ultimately he's like, he asked me, what do you need it to do? And I was like, I just need people to be entertained for like 50 minutes. And he was kind of like, okay, well focus on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what got me through getting the draft done for New York. But I still didn't feel like it quite delivered on the premise of like, I feel like it was, if anything, it was a little too tongue-in-cheek of me standing outside of it like, isn't this messed up? And like, now I'm doing, isn't that weird? Which was funny, but it didn't quite, I think, hit the way I wanted to. And then since I'd been out here in Los Angeles, I've been doing stuff at the Pack Theater, which is just next door in the complex. And they have great improv classes and sketch classes, and there's a director there who works with a lot of the sketch teams named Joe Wagner, who I ended up just hanging out with. We're kind of like smoking buddies. And so we ended up, just this and that. I just put him on blast. But he and I ended up talking about the show, just kind of like, and he brought up, he remembered seeing Mickey Rooney like on late night shows, because he's a little older than I am, and what Mickey Rooney was like at that stage in his life, where he was kind of like this Hollywood legend, but also kind of a Hollywood joke. And so like we started talking about it, and he ended up directing me, and he was the one who really pushed me towards trying to be Mickey Rooney at that stage in his life. And I think that was helpful for me, because I'm not very confrontational. Like even like this subject matter is probably the most like aggressive thing about, like, not aggressive, but like since like I don't really like doing satire, just because I feel like the opportunities for people to misinterpret it is so great, where it's kind of like, am I making fun of the thing, or am I like making fun of the people who make fun of the thing? And so actually trying to play Mickey Rooney as like a human in all his flaws was a very exciting acting challenge, I think, for me. And I think that's what separated this version from the New York version, which was just making it more about, this kind of, and I have a line in the show about like, am I a Mickey Rooney apologist? But like the idea of a product of his time, and like also as an artist trying to stay relevant, like I've taken on a few commercial roles where it's kind of like, oh, you just want me to stand in like a karate uniform? Like, you don't need me to do anything? You just want me here? And I'm like, okay, yeah. And so like, so I would say that the people who, like you said, it's not a solo show by any means.
Yeah.
I think it's like the people you talk with, the people who kind of have the outside eyes to tell you, hey, you should get some sleep, or hey, have you considered taking it in this direction? And actually trying to be open enough, or at least self-aware enough to know that like, oh, I should probably listen to someone.
And you have to have people you trust, because everybody is going to give you an opinion. Even after you've done your show.
People who've never done a show.
Right, will tell you how you could have done it better.
We'll tell you, oh, you just need to do this. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well, here,
thanks. Appreciate
show me.
that. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I think so. Get out of here.
But if you have people, you have to surround yourself with people you trust, people you've worked with. It's great to have a community of friends who are also creative. That's part of how this process got to where it was. 'Cause there was a part in my show where I was having some difficulty making this transition in the dialogue from this one message to the next message. And JJ, my director, was like, well, what about this? What if the Reverend wasn't out at the club, because the Reverend goes out to the club. What if he wasn't out at the club trying to pick up on big booty freaks and whatever, but
Gotta see the show.
yeah, it's a pretty fun show. I liked it. But what if there was a different meaning behind that? And so once I delved into that, it actually just opened up this whole another door for me. And actually, it took the show to a different level, which was fantastic. But you can't get there, is if you don't have people around you, and more importantly, if you don't have people you trust. Not all of JJ's suggestions I liked or took, but I trusted that he was trying to do the right thing in all of them, and that's a very important part of the process.
Oh yeah, I had a director and an acting coach. All the other stuff like sleeping and stuff, self-care. That's me. That was my call.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely had like my regular acting coach that coaches me for auditions. We actually broke down the show, and we would go literally like scene to scene, character to character, and we would get deeper instead of, because I was just so I didn't realize how on the surface I was with my show until I took it a step further and worked with an acting coach, not just a director, but an acting coach. Like, well, when you said that to your mom, why? Well, you were 16 and you said that to your mom. Where did that come from? Did you really feel like that? You just said growing up I had to be tough. You said that as your yourself now, but like at that age, what did that feel like? That pressure, that weight to like have to be, being 8 years old and having to, take care of my sisters, and because my mom was out, and having to be a little mother. It was like, how did that, I was like, whoa. So yeah, it went even deeper, like you're saying, like going deeper. So definitely an acting coach.
And then, so when you were writing these characters, how did you all get into the mind of the characters? Were they based on people in your life, people you know, or were they based on like you and your internal own process?
Yes. The Reverend is a hodgepodge of a couple of Reverends I knew growing up, and then added in some other pimp characters. And LaShawn, who's the other character, is again a hodgepodge of people I know who never took responsibility for anything they ever did. It was always somebody else's fault. Because see, what had happened was, but they also very directly represented me. Like I said, it's a personal story for me. So different sides of myself, just sort of heightened versions of myself. And getting in that, like I said, I think a lot about it. So, you know, I turned over and looked at it and then tried to grab it from a different perspective, and then started writing dialogue, and then tried to take a step back from the dialogue and see if I could turn it, and does it mean something else? Can I make it mean something else? Can I say it in a different way? Until sort of a rhythm started to develop within each of the characters. And it just sort of solidified itself. And it wasn't, I didn't fully realize it when it was happening. It wasn't until it was done, I took a step back and looked at it, that I realized that these were two very distinct characters. You wouldn't confuse them, even though it's me playing them moments apart. They had different speech patterns, different perspectives, and so it was just continually looking at it over and over again, knowing what my message was in the back of my head, but not trying to force it out, and just allowing that story to get out. Because ultimately, for me, and you kind of touched on this too, is like, I had a story to tell. And I think that's really important. Sometimes people...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh my God! I'm leaving. So sometimes people want to do a one-man show to showcase their talent, which is not terrible. It's not bad or anything. But for me, and it sounds like for you and also you, like I wanted to affect people. I wanted to tell a story that said something. So for me, having that in the back of my head, having the message of forgiveness, and that self-doubt and battling to come out through the story, really digging into that, and really telling that story was what was important. I sort of lost the question. I'm sorry.
You're gonna solo show right now.
Right. No, yeah.
Developing the characters?
Yeah, how do you get in the mind of the characters?
That is, I'll be honest with you, that's something I'm super, super new at. Until I did a solo show, I never did characters, maybe. Not like that colorful, you know, because in a solo show, you want, like you said, you want to make very distinctive gestures or voices or movements to let the audience know, hey, now this is this person saying this, and now this is me saying or responding. A lot, the characters were my family and people I grew up with and like ex-boyfriends. So of course, you know, I mean, it could be like a subtle movement of sitting there with like, you know, more of your legs, you know, lower register of like your boyfriend talking to you, and then you just like, but I don't, you know, just little things to just trying to do as much as I could there. Still getting comfortable with all of that. But yeah, just focusing more on what that character has to say instead of like how that character should look or sound. And it doesn't have to be like a character that a lot of people loved from my show is my grandma. My grandma, she's, you know, she was telling me very harsh things in very loving religious ways, where she would tell me, you know, back when I was your age, you know, you weren't allowed to say no to your husband if he wanted sex. Even if you didn't want to, you gave it to him. You know, I was a virgin when we got together. He wasn't, but that's okay because he's a man. You know, like things that are, like, you know, it's very heavy, but she said it in a loving way. So, like, my grandma, of course, I couldn't completely mimic my grandma, but what was her intention? And it was that. She was telling me very loving things that she believed, but were really heavy. Like, I'm like, Grandma, no, that's not okay, you know? So as long as that character, you know, is saying what they need to say, trust that, because they'll get it. You know, it doesn't have to be like a complete transformation. Like, of course, like John Leguizamo, you know, level where he's just like through the roof. But, you know, just what does that character have to say? Like, that's what's more important. Like, what does the character have to say in that moment? Why is that character saying it? Instead of like, well, this person would stand like this or chew like this or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, same question.
Yes.
How did you write Mickey Rooney? Like, how did you get in his mind?
Character. I think I knew as I was writing it that I would have to probably take some creative liberties, just because I don't know that I would be able to know what his process was. A friend of mine got me his autobiography, and like there's maybe a paragraph in it, and it is not. He does not feel bad about what he has done, and so I knew that I couldn't make him just like a mean racist, because I feel like nobody wants to spend like an hour with a mean racist, and so seizing on the idea of him as like I mean, it's I think something that like I hope that I have the awareness to laugh about, which is being an actor who really wants to be working, which I feel, and like that's something that I can play, and that's something that I can understand. I think that what was really helpful with having Joe direct me, because he's worked in comedy a lot, there were jokes that like I don't like to offend anyone. Like I try to be as inoffensive as possible just in my life, which is why I think satire does not come as easily to me, because anytime I would make a joke, I'm already thinking in my head of like, well, who's this? How is this going to be offensive? Like who would this hurt? And like I think that that's I mean, like I'm not. I don't like the idea of like blaming that on woke culture. I think it's just being aware that like your audience can be made up of a diverse group of people. Also because of the subject matter, I knew that like Asian people would be interested in seeing it, as well as like older white people, and like just because it's Mickey Rooney's old Hollywood, I feel like that's kind of like the two audiences. I'm kind of like, is there a way to do this show where like both groups are satisfied, where like, not that I feel like, you know, people are sensitive enough, they're like, oh, how could he do that to poor Mickey Rooney? But like at the same time I think the year that I went to New York Fringe, he had just died. And so like that in my head I was kind of like, is this gonna feel like I'm like, this guy's dead now, let's all laugh at him, right? Yeah. And so, but interestingly, I felt like when I went to New York, I pulled punches, and that's why the show wasn't as effective, because I made Mickey Rooney kind of just like a harmless, like, oh, what a bumbling, like, poor actor. And then when I didn't hear, it was Joe pushed me to like we would make jokes, like when I was writing, I'd make a joke and I'd be like, but I can't say that, and be like, you could probably say that, and usually those were the jokes that like hit the hardest, and I think it's probably because, I mean, there's something, I don't know how it worked. Honestly, I still don't know. Like, I will say the first show I did, I got 2 reviews on the website that like helped, I think, crystallize it for me. But there was an older woman who came and saw it and said, her review was basically, if you love Mickey Rooney, you have to see this show, which is like, oh, interesting. And like, I think she misinterpreted one of the last lines in the show, which is fine. But then in that same, like right underneath it, there was a review of an Asian woman who brought her daughter to the show, and she was kind of like, this is very important for her to see as she's finding her own identity. And I was kind of like, okay, like I did it. I somehow threaded the needle. And I think it does come down to characterization of like trying to find what the character is with their flaws, but like not stand outside of it, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's how that worked.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, especially, well, I agree, whatever. But especially on the last point of accepting your characters as they are, flaws and all, because it's really easy to sometimes stand back and judge your character. And this is kind of what you're alluding to when you did the New York show, where you sort of like was like, oh, look, isn't this funny? Isn't this funny? But especially in a show like that, character has to be real. Otherwise, it looks like you're poking fun. And I think, and a testament, and I think kudos to you for recognizing that and changing your show, because you can get laughs that way of just poking fun at it. But it's a much more effective show, I think, and clearly your show was great because I couldn't get in to see it, and everybody was talking about it. But if you inhibit it and be honest with it and be true and have that, whatever that character's truth is, has to be your truth, then I think it makes for a much more effective show.
That's a good point. That's true.
So now this is going to be the last question, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. So this is like words of wisdom. Like, give all of any advice that you think best advice you've heard as a first-time Fringer, and what you would want to tell first-time Fringers. Like, what do you wish you knew when starting this process?
That I could have relaxed more. Get it done. Like, it is a hustle. Yeah, relaxed more. Even though it was a lot of work. I don't know, that's it. Because, I mean, I really went for it.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, this is the first time I'm going to just put it out there. I want to put myself out there. This was my coming out story as well. Like, a lot of family and friends didn't even know that. They just saw, like, I was in Austin taking acting classes, and, oh, man, she's in LA, you know, doing stuff. They didn't know what I had done to get there. And it's like, oh, I was a stripper all this time. Hey, that's fun. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I had, you know, had my own apartment, I had a nice car, and was taking acting classes, and it was happening, you know. So it was my coming out story, but I wish I would have relaxed in the sense where it's like, what needs to get done is going to get done, and time management, and I don't know. I think that's the only thing I wish I would have told myself, to relax, because it was amazing. I had an amazing experience. It did really well. My show did really well. I just wish I would have, like, I panicked a lot.
My first Fringe was pretty easy because I was in a show that I've been doing for 8 years, and somebody just came in and go, we're gonna put this up in Fringe. And I didn't have to worry about anything.
Wow.
The first show I produced, or helped produce, which is next year, which I also directed. That's it. It's really about having a team, if you can. Especially you're doing a solo show, and you probably feel like you have to do all of this yourself, and that's how it qualifies as a solo show. And the thing is, you don't. You have a director, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Have a producer, have somebody else, have some buddies else helping you, and that's totally fine and appropriate. If this is your first time doing a Fringe, you're probably going to make a lot of Fringe friends. It's a wonderful community. This will be, I'm assuming, because I'm not sure that I'm doing a show yet in this next Fringe, but this will be my, I think, 7th Fringe. And there are people I know only at Fringe, which is weird. Because it's always like, hey, after Fringe, we're totally gonna hang out, and then, oh, hey, it's Fringe, how you doing?
Yeah.
But you know, you get by with a little help from your friends.
Believe in your show. I
Yeah.
would say. But you mentioned earlier, like, you were talking with your director friend, and like you would take his notes, but you would also, there were certain things that you were like, no, that's not the type of show this is. I think that, like, making sure, like, I don't want to say uncompromising, because I feel like compromise is important, but
Right.
like, I would say, like, stand by your work. I think,
Yeah,
like,
that's a
I
good one.
think that knowing what you want to do moving forward will help make decisions a lot easier, and also being able to say, I don't know, but like, I had an awesome stage manager here in this space, and like, it was very easy, because, you know, if you know kind of what you want, you can explain it better, as opposed to, like she said, like, it's more difficult when, like, people are like, I'm not sure, you know, like, even if it's just kind of like, do you like this light or this light? That one, you know, of just kind of like knowing, I guess, what you want to make. And also finding people who will help make those decisions for you if you have to, which is another something that I did.
Director.
If the lights come on and the people show up and you do the show, it's a success.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that's really important.
Just in you're gonna enjoy it, but you have to remember to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good
Remember
one.
to
That's
enjoy
what
it.
I relax.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
I-
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I meant by relax. Like, I wish I would have just like chilled out and had a little bit more fun. Yeah, but it's intense because you care. It's very important to you. This is your baby. Like, a lot, you know, that was
my baby, my show, my art.
100%. It's similar to me, and that, which is why I had that. I didn't have somebody else because it was really hard to share that.
Oh, yeah, I can't.
And to have somebody, because it was open, it was raw for me. So to have somebody kind of poke it, who I didn't fully trust, was not really okay. So which is why I felt like, okay, nobody else can do this. We're just gonna have to do this, JJ. You know, it wasn't terrible. I did end up winning the 2018 Solo Performance Award, so it worked out okay. But again, you get by with a little help from your friends. You know, got to have people you trust. You know, if you have somebody who you know who is organized and gets things done and doesn't care about any of the standing in the limelight, those are the best friends to have. Like, be like, hey, I'm doing this thing, so can you figure out this stuff for me and tell me what's going on, or tell me where to be, because you want to get, and this is another panel altogether, but there are awards you want to submit for. There's you want to get a publicity statement out there, try and get reviewers in from papers, all of these things to think about, and you also still have to do your show. So, you know, having somebody to help you get through all that, who's not necessarily on the creative side, or if you have somebody who can be on the creative side and do other things, great. But, you know, you don't have to do it by yourself.
Awesome. So I'm going to hand out these water bottles.
Oh, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And now we're going to open it up to audience questions. So, yeah, ask anything about their writing processes.
It's a super basic question. Just curious about your show lengths, kind of what they averaged.
55 minutes.
Yeah, same. Mine's about 50, right under an hour. Maybe if it went an hour, it went an hour. Whoa. But 50 minutes to an hour,
Okay.
max.
And in Fringe, you want to be conscious. I'm sorry, you didn't answer. Go
Oh,
ahead.
50 minutes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, but you were right. You
You got to be
of the
conscious
time.
about that in
It's
Fringe,
in and
because
out.
you've got another show coming in right after you.
Right. So
You've got 15 minutes load in, 15 minutes load out, and you, especially if you have a lot to load in and out, you don't want to fuss with that time.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that leads into a question I had just personally. How do you know when your show is like done? So let's say you wrote a show and it's an hour and 5 minutes. What do you cut? What do you keep? How do you make that decision?
For Fringe, every time I've been a part of that process, my show, going in, I knew my show was going to be 55 minutes, but that was like my 5th Fringe. Previously directing, I made it to that point. Like, we're going to do a show that is this long. Lamprey, Weekend of Vengeance, which was, I can't remember what year that was, but we knew the show had to be that long. And when the first draft was done, I was aiming for to direct a 55-minute show. When the first draft was done, it was an hour and 20. And it seemed like we weren't gonna make it, but we slaved over it. We cut, you kill babies, like, not
He's like, help.
yeah. Sorry, I mean no minutes towards you. You're a very cute baby. But you kill baby. You have to do the things you have to do to get the script down. And surprisingly, as a part of that process and making those decisions, your show gets better. When it gets tighter and it's more streamlined, some things you just totally cut out. Other things, you find different, shorter ways to say them. You have to get more creative to bring your script in. So, personally, I feel like solo shows are about an hour. That's a great length. So go in knowing how long your show's gonna be. Write the show however you want to write it, and then go back and fix it.
I know I got here a little late, but you in the middle were talking earlier about a writing class. I don't know if anyone else did, but just any suggestions, or were you?
Yeah, totally. So the sketch writing class that I took was with Playhouse West with Devin Curitin. He was actually another actor at that school. Playhouse West is an amazing school. It's a Meisner study.
Meisner technique. But they have other classes. That was one of them, the sketch writing class. And then the other writing class that really helped me was with Jessica Lynn Johnson at the Whitefire Studio. So yeah, either just you could email her. I'm pretty sure her name's all. Someone can get you.
Yeah.
We could get you her email address so you can get like that the schedule and how to sign up. Yeah, but that definitely helps though with prompts, because sometimes, like as a brand new writer, I guess with me, I would sit and I'd be like, well, what am I supposed to write? Like I know what I have to say, but I don't know. Like I can't write. Like I almost felt frozen. Like I have so much to say, but I just can't even pick up the pen and begin.
Yeah.
And once you begin with like a writing class or someone who can prompt you or coach you, I always describe it as being like, like a lawnmower. You like pull it a few times, like, and then, but once you got it on, you're like mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
That's what writing for me is. So I always need someone helping me, because once I get started, it's getting started. So that would be great. Yeah.
I took a sketch writing at the Pack Theater, and that's actually how I met a lot of, the theater has comedy shows, improv shows, like 7 nights a week, and so, like, it's a good, I don't know if you guys know the phrase rat park? Oh no.
Rat park?
Rat park?
Like rat?
Rat is
like,
in like
Yeah,
sewer
the
rat?
rats, yeah. It was, oh no, it was a thing with, where they like, it was a thing with like addiction, and like they found that if they put rats in a park, they were less likely to become addicted to like stuff, like bad behaviors, I suppose. And so like, for me, like having a community that can be like, oh, any night of the week I can go in and see what's happening. And like, I'll recognize a few people. So that's that was helpful, because also I think like constantly having comedy in my face like helped make sure the writing was at a level. I wanted the show to be funny as well, in spite of the subject matter. So that was helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
This is probably mostly for you, but all three of you might have an answer. I'm Layla. What did you include in your pitch? Because you said that actually the first festival you applied to was New York Fringe, and then
Yes.
you had a pitch.
That's
So
impressive.
at what point are you focused on pitch, and what point are you like, this is happening, sit down, write, rewrite?
I think the pitch was kind of that little paragraph. It was like a paragraph that basically said I wanted to play Mickey Rooney developing his character in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and then I think just a little more information if you weren't familiar with it, like kind of like in 1960 something, Mickey Rooney played like the definitive yellow face portrayal in what happens if an Asian actor attempts to portray him. Doing that, I think that was it, and then I submitted, and it was kind of like, we'll see. But yeah, I feel like it's an interesting enough like idea that people are kind of like, well, I kind of want to see what that is, and then like I was like, oh no, I kind of have to figure out what that is. So that was the pitch for that, and I think the pitch for the scholarship program was just kind of what I had done and what I would like to attempt to do moving forward, which was just like making it better, I suppose. Like, also I had grown in the 5 years since I had done it, so I was like, I hope I'm a better writer now than I was 5 years ago, and actor, and so having an opportunity to try to bring those new skills to the table. But it is an interesting way to kind of write about it, though, right? Like, because it's the same thing, like, I have a monthly sketch show that I have to write, like, the event copy and all of that, and it's kind of like, how do I describe a thing without just being like, just come see it, if it would make sense. I don't know, I think that's a weird side writing skill that you also have to kind of hone, is like how to talk about yourself,
Yeah,
like as a
product.
Right, as a product. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange.
It's another language.
It's hard. I'm terrible at it.
And then Jonathan, do you have any advice about applying for the scholarship? Like, how was that process for you?
That process was friends, good friends. I had a friend who was kind of like, I saw his show maybe the year before. It was called Secret Identity Crisis, about like Asian superheroes. And he was one who was kind of like, I think he reminded me like the week before this scholarship was like due, but he had been like, I had told him the premise, and he was like, you should apply for the scholarship, you should apply for the scholarship, and then like, finally he was like, you should do it, and then like, I looked over this stuff, and I want to say, I felt like you made the process very simple. It was pretty easy to submit. It's like a Google form, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say the one thing, after I submitted it, I don't think I put in my email address, so I don't think I got it back. And so then I was agonizing over like, did I write everything right? And like, I don't even know what I wrote anymore because I just like typed it in and sent it. But I feel like you made it very simple, and like, since I had already talked about the show in that language of kind of like, okay, this is what it is from like a technical standpoint, like I kind of had that stuff ready to go. Yes, thank you again for the scholarship. It was very helpful.
No, it's a great program. Like, we love that program.
It was so fun. It was great. Oh, and also you paired me up with Royce. As the mentor, and he was great. I loved working with him.
Did you follow a specific format for your show, like acts and scenes? Did you look at other stuff out there as far as that goes, or did you just do your own thing, or?
Well, I had my director and my coach. For me, I'll have to say the directing really helped, because
For me, like things like, I did a scene where I was my mom, my dad, and myself, and then my sister for like a split second, where my dad grabs my mom from the neck and throws her against the wall, and I come in and I ask I come in and I was 9 years old, and I actually stabbed my dad in the thigh with a kitchen knife, and then my sister's standing there in shock, and then I'm like, call someone, like. So, and it was all against the wall, and it was just me. So going from like mom, dad, me, sister, like in different movements, even if it's on the ground, then getting up and then like standing back, like that was the director. Like I would never have imagined even how to begin that. I just knew I had to say it, and I wrote it, and now it's like, okay, you by yourself act out that scene. So that was my director. And then my show also starts with, I actually pull a plant. It was a friend of mine that I pull from the audience, and I give him a lap dance. And then he goes back to the audience, and I have literally like 15 seconds to go and change and then come out. And my show starts with, so I used to be a stripper. And then it starts from like that to like chronological order, but from like child to how I led back up to that moment. But a lot of that was like the director. And I would say what I've gotten, which has been really great advice as a writer with friends that are more experienced writers, don't worry about like your order yet. Like on your way home, you might all of a sudden start thinking of the scene with like you and your mom. Just write it out. You, your mom, you, your mom, you, your mom. And then later you'll figure out like where that goes. Like it's a puzzle. Like, oh, that goes here, that goes there. And then it's just like, that's how I did it. So you don't have to really worry about like, how's it gonna look right now? Just start writing it.
I think that since I knew it was a solo show, I was trying to actively think of things that would make it feel less like a solo show. So like, I have, I wasn't even sure if this would work, but I had written in the script, which was like, I want to do a bit where I walk off stage and have a conversation with someone else, and just like, so it seems like there are two characters, but it's just me off stage. And my director actually gave me the note of just sticking my head out, so it was my body. So for this one, like, that's how I did it. But like, also it was like, structurally I knew that there were a few things just from talking about like the idea that I wanted to try. Like one of the things was I knew that I wanted to do do a Chinese accent and a Japanese accent sort of in close proximity, just so people can be like, oh wow, those are two very different things. But like, also as like an actor, like being able to showcase them, like I can do both of these accents if you're casting. The other thing is, I knew that I wanted, because of the subject matter, when I was writing it, Ghost in the Shell was like about to come out, and so amongst my Asian actor friends, there was a lot of anger, and like I'm maybe a little too much of sitting on the fence, where I just try to like look at it from every angle, and I'm kind of like, yeah, you can be mad, but like if you boycott it, all the Asian actors that work on it aren't gonna get any residuals. And so I was like, what is the thing that I can do that can talk about this issue without trying to tear someone else's work down? And like, in doing this, so I knew at some point I would have to talk about it. And I decided ultimately the way to do that was to just, and it led to one of the better jokes in the show, I thought, which was, I'm not actually Mickey Rooney. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but and then it was me just talking about what it's like being an Asian actor working in like a world with Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney's Mr. Yunioshi. But I think that structurally, like those were the things. Also, I knew that because I knew I wanted it to be mostly Mickey Rooney. Like I would have to. So my act breaks were letters from other characters. So like Audrey Hepburn is one of the letters. Toshiro Mifune, and I made up those letters, like, which I think has also led to some confusion. So at the end, but so that way structurally, those breaks kind of also helped me. A lot of this, the way I worked was in how I was going to remember it, because like that was the other thing. It's like about 50 minutes, so having sort of landmarks of kind of like, okay, after this is going to be the letter, after the letter is this thing. So knowing like what those were
Like
in kind of like
chapters.
chapters, I think was really helpful in terms of like structure of kind of like, that way if I got lost, I could be like, okay, well what chapter am I in? And we'll just jump to the next chapter if I have to. But I think that's how I went about structuring it, if that answered your question.
Mine had a much more traditional structure. I should have used chapters. That would have been great. I had to remember everything, and it was loosely connected because it was just monologue, one character. So it was much more traditionally a traditional play structure, which worked for my story. And ultimately, to me, that was more important because I thought about how I was going to do this in the beginning, and it's like, well, how do I want to structure this? And ultimately, I landed on like it should be a play. So I wrote it less like a one-man show, more like a play, and it took those sort of beats, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
I think we had a question back there.
I did raise my hand. This was way too in the weeds, but it's the kind of thing that I worry about a whole lot. What was the line at the end that you think that lady misinterpreted?
It was helpful because I actually adjusted it moving forward, but I have a quote. It was the quote from the book about Mickey Rooney doing Mr. Yunioshi, and the quote is, he said that in all the years that after the movie came out, Chinese people still come up to me and say, "We loved it. You were fantastic," in reference to Tiffany's, and and then I made the joke. I have to laugh at the fact that after 40 years, he still thought he didn't know Mr. Yunioshi was Japanese, because he hit the Chinese thing. But she, I think, latched on to the thing of like, in her review, she was kind of like, he pointed out paradoxically that Asian people have no problem with Mr. Yunioshi. I was kind of like, not quite. And so like, it helped though, because afterwards I would read the quote and say, there's a lot to unpack here. Those are his words, and like, I think that helped moving forward. But I was kind of like, oh, I can see how she made that like mistake in the moment. I was kind of like, it was very sweet though. I was like, I'm glad you enjoyed the show.
That's an important point too, because there's something happened in my preview, because my show took a turn, and a lot of people got lost. And it was a universal comment from the people in the preview. Also, a preview is a great way not only to get people to initially come see your show, but to have people, again, you trust, come see your show and give you notes. But I adjusted my show and I changed some language throughout the show so that when it made that turn, people didn't get lost. But yes, stuff like feedback like that is very important.
Right.
And then we have time for one or two more questions. I'll go you, then you. And then you. We'll speed through these.
Sure, I promise.
Some of you guys have mentioned, like, you wrote about your life, and I'm sure some of your family might have seen the show.
Yeah.
You might have written about something that you were afraid people might have taken offense. Did anyone ever take offense to your shows or anything you might have said?
Yes.
And if they did, how did you handle that?
Like my mom made a comment. Premiered my show 2018 at the Solo Fest, and my mom, she just said, well, some people remember things differently than others, because I mean, my childhood was rough, and I'm gonna remember it the way I remembered it. And my mom's, either if she hasn't forgiven herself or she's still ashamed of it, that's her problem. She's my mother. I love her, but I have to do my own healing, and this is part of it. I'm not offending anybody. I'm just telling my truth. And in the truth, it shows that you were sometimes a mother who would neglect her daughters, and wasn't it was cold. It was like, tough love type stuff, My mom was the only one who said, well, some people remember things differently than others, because she was kind of with her pride, Latina woman pride, like, oh, I did my best. I understand that, but this is my truth. That's it. Other than that, of course, I give a guy a lap dance, so there was I heard, there was a woman who, in one of the matinees, it was kind of weird, because the audience was just kind of like, what is going on, why is this girl doing this? And I said, are you guys asleep or what? Because I was in my character, and this is how I would act at the club, And this woman yelled, well, we're in shock. And I said, well, good, you should be. Thank you for coming. I said something I said, good, you should be. And I did my show, and at the end of the show, she was just like, oh my God, your story's so powerful. Because you talk about strippers, and people are like, strippers. They don't know the face. They don't know the success stories. They don't know, why some girls are there. They don't. So that's another issue. But yeah, but it's okay. People should be talking, I think. It's stirring up something. That's why we're sharing our stories.
I think maybe the first draft I wrote, I feel like I offended. I sent it to a few Asian friends, and also like the head of an Asian arts organization, and probably I feel like I offended him the most, because and granted it was a rough draft, but he wrote me back, and it kind of shaped how I thought about it moving forward. But he was like, I don't see how this helps Asian people at all, and I was kind of like, oh. And so, I mean, one of the things I'd always hoped to do with it was, like, as an Asian American actor in Tampa, Florida, doing like regional theater, like I was trying to create a play that like I wish that I could have had, because I had friends do like one-man shows, kind of like, that it's like, I found the show, I want to do it, and I'm kind of like, what is the show that like I could do that was for me? And so in my head, I was kind of like, I understand that like maybe this isn't how you would want to create Asian art, but I think for me, I feel like the benefit of having a show that showcases an Asian actor in a role that's subversive, funny, hopefully smart, is a boon for any, and I would like it to be published, or like to have it be available to other Asian actors to do. And I think like that helped crystallize it, was the fact that he was so adamant that this isn't going to help the larger community, that I was kind of like, well, if we help individuals, they're part of the community, and if any of those actors do the show, build up the confidence in the community around them that they need to move on to bigger things, isn't that helping the Asian community, I suppose? But I think it's also like, even with offending people, it's like, I think you were saying, like, you don't have to absorb everything, you know? It's kind of like, okay, that's your opinion,
Yeah.
and like, that's valid, I respect it. And I also use an older Asian man, and so I'm in his head, I'm sure Mr. Yunioshi is a lot more hurtful to him than it is to me, like, so many generations removed. That's the thing I was talking about, where I try to like justify like every side of the story, and so yeah, I think someone is always going to possibly be offended, and I think if you're trying to make an effort to, if those aren't your intentions and you're actually talking with, see, I don't want to be like, if your intentions are good, it's fine, because it's kind of like, well, you should also be aware of like where some of these criticisms might be coming from. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Reverend Johnson opens the show hungover, drinking Tanqueray and tonic at the 12 noon early bird service at the bar. And he's foul-mouthed, talking about hanging out at the club, and there's a heavy religious component to it, and some people are initially like, what the actual, because you know they're not used to seeing it. Some people are. Some people are like, yeah, I know that guy. And the thing, and I knew that going into it. Most of those people were won over by the end of the show, so I wasn't worried about it. But the thing is you have to tell your story. It's really easy to not tell your story because you're worried how someone's going to take your story. When I did stand-up comedy, I started doing stand-up comedy in the 90s, right at the tail end of the heyday. And the thing was, it's like, if your jokes aren't offending someone, it's probably not funny. It's a terrible thing to say in this day and age, but it still holds true. I mean, there is some level of offense to everything that's funny. So I'm not saying try and go out and offend people, because that's also very easy to do. But tell your story. You gotta tell your story.
One thing that might be helpful is I always think of it, I try to distinguish between offending someone and challenging them. I think like offending someone is just saying something that's going to shock someone, whereas challenging is like doing the same thing but with intention of kind of, okay, this may be initially shocking, but if you stick with it, there's a payoff for it. And I think if you aim to make your work challenging, I feel like that will probably get you over the hurdle of like offending people, of kind of like, okay, there's a reason that I'm doing it this way. If you stick around, and if you walk out, it's because you didn't stick around to see the challenging part. But knowing that that's a very real possibility. But yes.
Awesome, and unfortunately that is our time. We will all be outside for the next 15 minutes or so if you have any more questions.
Yeah. And if, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
I am around. If you see me, feel free to ask me any questions.
Oh, yes.
You can find me on the Hollywood Fringe site, Victor Isaac, ISAAC, 1S, 2As. Send me a message. It is a very wonderful and challenging thing that you're all thinking about doing. I hope you all do it because it's great. Sorry.
Yes. Oh no, that's perfect.
Can you also hear?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm Karina Calderon.
And I'm J. Elijah.
Sorry,
Cho.
did you want my email address? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
spell my name? Corina. That's my first name. My last name is Calderon. Karina Calderon.
I'm J. Elijah, Elijah, Cho, Cho. And our moderator.
Oh yeah, and,
Yes.
I'm Alex Prim. I don't think I announced this at the beginning. I'm the events manager for the Fringe.
Also very
Thank
helpful.
you.
This guy.
Yeah.
I had
Yes.
so many questions, and he's always very eager to answer. So
Yeah,
this
so
guy,
if you see any of us on staff, feel free to ask
Yeah.
us anything and we'll direct you to someone.
and no stupid questions. I ask
Yeah.
like so many little. It's scary. They're around though.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.